Song Liangwan could mimic countless voices and master various disguises, but she could never replicate that boy sitting in the wheelchair.
He was unique.
No matter how many voices she learned to imitate or how many identities she adopted, he always held a special place in her heart. Because among all the dazzling flowers in the world, he was the one who captivated her soul. It was the first night Gu Sidong married into the Song family. After bowing to heaven and earth, she sat in the bridal chamber, her red veil draped over her head, waiting for her husband, Song Jinya. Outside, fireworks filled the sky, and the sound of clinking glasses echoed in the air. Beneath the flickering candlelight, she did not wait for Song Jinya, but instead welcomed a flower thief. The Song family celebrates a wedding, and here I am to steal hearts. I've always loved brides, especially those from wealthy families like the Songs. It was a delicate male voice. When the veil was lifted, Gu Sidong found herself facing an extraordinarily handsome face. The first thought that flashed through her mind was, with such good looks, why would he need to steal anything? But that absurd thought only lasted a moment. The next, she was terrified by the lecherous expression of the flower thief. Her face turned pale, and just as she was about to scream, the thief lunged forward and covered her mouth. "Calm down, sweet lady. Come, give me a kiss." Just as the scream echoed from the bridal chamber, Song Jinya was in the front hall toasting his guests. His face changed drastically, and he rushed to the chamber with his men. When he kicked open the door, what greeted him was a shocking sight. Gu Sidong, dressed in her red bridal attire, was cornered at the head of the bed, holding a golden hairpin against her throat, tears in her eyes, looking ready to die rather than submit. Meanwhile, the flower thief was waving his hands in surrender, trying to wrest the hairpin from her while nervously exclaiming, Wait. I was just playing a joke." Song Jinya's vision darkened as he roared, "Liangwan, what the hell are you doing?" Amidst the astonished stares of the guests, the flower thief blinked, gave an awkward smile, and, seeing no way to escape, simply pulled off the headband, letting her long hair cascade down. She turned around, clasped her hands together, and with a crisp feminine voice, greeted the shocked Gu Sidong. "I am Song Liangwan, your sister-in-law. Nice to meet you." That was a wedding night Gu Sidong would never forget for the rest of her life. Afterward, Song Liangwan was punished by being sent to the ancestral hall to reflect on her actions. Gu Sidong brought her a meal out of concern, thinking that, after all, she was a young woman who might need some comfort. But once inside, Gu Sidong realized she had overthought it. Her sister-in-law, Song Liangwan, was indeed not someone ordinary people could understand. She was, in fact, having the time of her life. Somehow, she had acquired a complete outfit and was now wearing it, with a fake mustache on her lip and a feather fan in hand, striking the pose of a refined military strategist. When she saw Gu Sidong enter, her eyes lit up. She walked over, coughed twice, and in an elderly tone, mimicking perfectly, said, "The night is long, and it's been days since I've seen you. I've missed you greatly. How have you been, dear sister-in-law?" Gu Sidong's eyes widened in disbelief. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this sight. But what shocked her even more came next. Song Liangwan waved her fan, leaned closer with a mischievous grin, and said, "You came at the perfect time, sister-in-law. I need to sneak out, so cover for me for a while. Don't tell anyone, especially my second brother." Such blatant honesty and trust left Gu Sidong completely speechless. She was about to say something when Song Liangwan darted out, moving swiftly like the wind and leaping onto the wall. She turned back and smiled, her face radiant in the sunlight. "I'm sneaking out to meet someone today. His name is Ji Yuanfu, and he's a legal advisor. What do you think of my disguise? Don't we look like a perfect match?" With a flick of her sleeve, she disappeared into the wind, leaving Gu Sidong standing there with her hand over her mouth, completely dumbfounded. She met Ji Yuanfu at the age of 13, before Song Liangwan had fully blossomed into the eccentric genius of the Song family. Growing up, She had a penchant for wielding swords and causing both minor and major troubles, but for the most part, she was still considered normal. That was Song Jinya's evaluation of his younger sister, which Song Liangwan naturally disagreed with. In her view, it was after meeting Ji Yuanfu that she was truly reborn. 100 voices, 100 lives, 100 transformations. Ji Yuanfu was the legal advisor at the Huai City Yamen. Born with a leg disability, he was abandoned at the Yamen's doorstep and later adopted by Chief Ji, a bachelor at the time. Chief Ji was a rough man, but the son he raised, Ji Yuanfu, was elegant and refined. In his azure robe, sitting in his wheelchair reading, he was like a painting. The sight of him, framed by the falling pear blossoms in the courtyard, etched itself deeply into Song Liangwan's memory when she came looking for him. That year, Song Liangwan was only 13. She met Ji Yuanfu at the birthday banquet of the Huai city governor, and from that moment, she was captivated, unable to forget him. For Song Liangwan, it was his voice she encountered before ever seeing him. At the governor's grand birthday celebration, many noble families were invited, and one of the feature performances was titled The Night Parade of 100 Ghosts. The candles were extinguished, and moonlight spilled into the room. A screen separated the audience from the performers, and from behind it came the first eerie sigh. Like a signal, it was followed by the rustle of wind through bamboo, the whispers of flower spirits, the caws of demon birds, the seductive laughter of women, the weeping of scholars, and the tired footsteps of old men on a long journey. A myriad of sounds and scenes layered on top of one another, so vivid that it felt as though a haunted forest had truly come alive in that room. Everyone was enthralled, especially Song Liangwan. She was just a child, at the peak of curiosity, and this was her first encounter with the art of voice mimicry. Her heart was completely enraptured. When the 100 ghosts finished their song and the final note lingered, the candles suddenly flared back to life. The room full of people awoke from their trance, and someone was the first to clap. Amazing! Truly, I've never heard anything like it. Song Liangwan, too, stood up, ignoring her father's attempts to stop her, and marched straight to the screen. I don't believe it. There's no way one person could make all those sounds. There must be something hidden back here. In a few quick strides, she was behind the screen and instantly froze in place. A pair of eyes, a pair of clear, penetrating eyes, met hers. A lone boy, handsome and poised, sat in a wheelchair, like a figure from a painting. Their gazes locked, and Song Liangwan remained still, as if struck by lightning. The bustling noise around her faded away, leaving her standing alone in a vast wilderness under the moon, the wind in her ears, and in her heart and mind, she could see only him. It wasn't until much later that she learned there was a term for this feeling, one glance, a lifetime. At that moment, it wasn't until the boy coughed softly and nodded at her, saying, "It's a pleasure to meet you, third Miss Song," that she snapped back to reality. But by the time she had come to her senses, the boy had already turned his wheelchair and quietly retreated to the back hall, vanishing from her sight. That night, even though Song Liangwan hadn't touched a drop of wine, she felt as if she were drunk. She walked as if floating, and upon returning home, she spent half the night on the rooftop, singing and dancing as though possessed. Song Jinya came out shouting, "Liangwan, have you had enough? Get down here this instant." But she only laughed more gleefully, twirling in circles with her skirt lifted, her hands cupped around her mouth as if announcing to the world, "Ji Yuanfu, his name is Ji Yuanfu." Her laughter echoed in the wind, and her eyes sparkled as she shouted at Song Jinya, "Second brother, I want him to be my teacher. I want to learn voice mimicry from him. What do you think?" Song Jinya was furious. "Fine, fine, fine. You and your crazy ideas." From that day onward, Song Jinya felt that his little sister had completely abandoned any hope of being normal and had embarked on the path of an eccentric, never to return. At first, Ji Yuanfu refused to take Song Liangwan as his apprentice. When she found him, he was reading under a pear tree. Upon hearing her request, he turned his wheelchair and politely declined. It's just a trivial art meant to entertain others. Why would third Miss Song want to learn it? Song Liangwan, too embarrassed to say because of you, brushed off her sleeves, trying to look righteous as she declared, to bring more joy to the world and ease the suffering of the people. Ji Yuanfu glanced at her with a look reserved for someone who's lost their mind and said nothing. He simply turned his wheelchair and ignored her. From then on, he remained firm in his refusal, while she was just as determined. Song Liangwan, with her thick skin, visited him every day and started calling him master of her own accord. Finally, one day, Ji Yuanfu could no longer bear it. Under the pear tree, he told her, if you wish to learn 100 kinds of mimicry, you must first experience 100 different lives. If you have the perseverance for that, come find me again. His meaning was simple. To imitate a peddler, you must first sell goods on the street. To mimic a dancer, you must first dance yourself. Only by living 100 different lives could you master 100 kinds of voice mimicry. In truth, this was just an excuse to discourage her, hoping she'd give up. But who would have thought that Song Liangwan, ever stubborn, took it as a secret technique? She clasped her hands together and, overjoyed, hurried off. She didn't return for a whole month. The Song family was frantic, searching all over Huai City, but unable to find any trace of the missing Song Liangwan. The entire city was abuzz with rumors, but only Ji Yuanfu knew the truth. However, even he didn't know where she had gone, and he became increasingly uneasy. Sleepless nights followed, as he never imagined things would go this far. Just when everyone's hearts were in their throats, Song Liangwan returned one ordinary evening. At first, Ji Yuanfu didn't recognize her. He casually handed a bowl of water to a beggar passing by his door. The beggar, dirty and unrecognizable, had a surprisingly soft and timid voice. "Thank you, big brother." Ji Yuanfu nodded absent-mindedly, still deep in his own worries. The beggar spoke a few more words, but he wasn't really listening. Then suddenly, a sharp cry pierced his ears, and a familiar voice exclaimed with excitement, "I did it. Master, you didn't even recognize me. I did it." His body trembled. The beggar quickly wiped off the soot from her face, revealing a pair of sparkling eyes, beaming up at him. "You." The shock was so overwhelming that Ji Yuanfu couldn't find the words. After a long pause, he turned his wheelchair, his shoulders trembling slightly. Curious, Song Liangwan leaned closer and squatted down, only to gasp in surprise. "Master, why are you crying?" The wind swept across the sky, their robes fluttering. Suddenly, Ji Yuanfu reached out, grabbed Song Liangwan, and pulled her into his embrace. Caught off guard, her head bumped against his chest, and in that moment, it was as if the world fell silent. Heartbeats mingled, breaths intertwined, and warm tears slid down her neck. Song Liangwan shivered, but didn't dare move. The setting sun bathed them in its golden glow, casting long shadows on the ground. Pear blossoms floated gently down, becoming part of the scene, as though they were a painting. Thus, the chaotic uproar came to an end. Later, as Song Liangwan sat under the tree, she recounted her experience to Ji Yuanfu with great enthusiasm. "Master, I lived among beggars for a month. Every day, I sat by the city gates and saw all sorts of people learning all kinds of voices. Oh, and I made some good friends too. We all lived in an abandoned temple. I told them my name was Yudo, Taro, and they loved me for it. They said I was clever and always thought of me first whenever they had something good to eat. I didn't suffer much at all." In the midst of her animated storytelling, Ji Yuanfu suddenly interrupted. "Why did you call yourself Yudo?" Song Liangwan paused, scratching her head, a little embarrassed. "Because master, you're Yuanji, rice ball." She blinked, her face tinged with a blush, but she still gazed steadily at Ji Yuanfu. "You're the rice ball, and I'm the taro. Aren't we a perfect match?" Having gotten to know him better, she never hid her feelings for him, shamelessly expressing her affection. Her words drifted in the wind, and Ji Yuanfu coughed. turning his wheelchair, his long eyelashes trembling slightly. "Who allowed you to give me such a ridiculous nickname?" The wind rustled the sky, pear blossoms fluttering down, and Song Liangwan couldn't hold back her laughter. The sound, like silver bells, echoed through the small courtyard for a long, long time. "You're leaving?" Song Liangwan quietly slipped into the back hall of the yamen, still dressed in her strategist disguise, squatting in front of Ji Yuanfu's wheelchair with wide eyes. Ji Yuanfu nodded. "Yes, I'm going to Feng City on official business. There's a plague there, and I need to represent the Huaidu Yamen to distribute disaster relief and food." "How long will you be gone?" Song Liangwan asked pitifully. "I'm not sure yet." Ji Yuanfu reached out, peeled off the fake mustache stuck to Song Liangwan's lip, and frowned slightly. "I heard you've caused trouble again? Scared your second brother's new bride?" Song Liangwan chuckled sheepishly, but quickly put on a pitiful expression. "I want to go with you." "No." Ji Yuanfu refused without hesitation, his gaze deep. "You've had your fun these past years, and there's nothing more I can teach you. Your second brother is married now, and it's time for you to settle down. In the future, you should come here less often." After saying that, he started to dismiss her, turning his wheelchair to push Song Liangwan toward the door. She stumbled as he shoved her, grabbing the door frame with both hands, refusing to leave. Master, you're driving me away again. I just got here. Master, Yuanzi." At the sound of her loud shout, both of them froze. Ji Yuanfu lowered his head, and Song Liangwan looked up. Their eyes met, and the air between them seemed to solidify. After a long pause, Ji Yuanfu's voice came out hoarse. "It's been so many years. Why do you still persist?" The first year, she took him as her master. Reluctant to break his promise, he casually taught her some mimicry skills, thinking she'd quickly grow bored and move on to something new. But she didn't. The second year, she clung to him even more, learning not only mimicry but also coming by daily to clean his house, finding doctors to treat his leg, running errands to fetch medicine. Neighbors unfamiliar with the situation thought head Constable G had arranged a child bride for him. By the third year, she had come of age, and marriage proposals started coming to the Song family. She scared off the matchmakers with ghost tricks and came to tell him, laughing so hard she doubled over. He didn't know what to feel, only muttering from his wheelchair, "If you keep fooling around like this, you'll never get married." She sat under the tree, drinking sour plum soup, wiping her mouth before looking up at him with a serious face. "But I'm Yuto. I like Yuanzi. I don't want to marry anyone else." All these years, she never hid her feelings for him, forever shameless and unabashed. But while she kept drawing closer, he kept pushing her away. Because no one understood the situation better than he did. "Stop talking about love. You're the third young lady of the Song family from Huaidu, and I'm just a crippled, impoverished scribe. How much of a chance do you think there is for this love to succeed?" Ji Yuanfu forcibly pried Song Liangwan's hands from the doorframe and shut the door, sending her away. Sitting behind the door, he pressed his back against it, listening to her yell and pound on the other side. He didn't move for a long time, his face pale, eyes blankly staring into the distance, as if shrouded in mist. That summer, Ji Yuanfu led a convoy carrying disaster relief food, heading toward Feng City. Not long into the journey, they took a rest. A guard brought water to Ji Yuanfu's carriage, and as he drank, he suddenly grabbed the guard's wrist, his voice gritting through clenched teeth. "Song Liangwan, are you serious?" The guard seemed frightened, trembling as he looked up, revealing a completely unfamiliar face. "I am new here. I don't know what the scribe is talking about." Ji Yuanfu took a deep breath, tightening his grip. Just as he was about to speak, the carriage jolted violently to a stop. Chaos erupted outside, and a distant voice yelled out, "Stop! Stop! We're being robbed!" Dust billowed in the air, flags fluttered in the wind, and a gang of bandits surrounded the convoy, their attack fierce and sudden. In the ensuing chaos, the guard wriggled free of Ji Yuanfu's grasp, quickly hoisting him onto his back and rushing out of the carriage. "Quick, Master Scribe, I'll protect you and help you escape." Outside, swords clashed and a bloody battle unfolded. The guard, with Ji Yuanfu on his back, darted through the chaos, recklessly charging for safety. Ji Yuanfu struggled on his back. "Liangwan, stop pretending at a time like this. Forget about me. Escape on your own." As the situation spiraled out of control, a group of horsemen suddenly halted in front of them, surrounding the guard and Ji Yuanfu on 3 sides. Trying to escape? The bandit leader, clad in a billowing red robe, looked down at them from his horse, sneering. "Is this all the guts an official scribe has?" The voice was familiar, sending a shiver down the guard's spine. He lifted his head and recognized the faces before him. Big Qian, Little Stutter, Long Lai. He blurted out in shock, both excited and disbelieving. "Oh my god, what are you guys doing as bandits?" The bandits on horseback froze, exchanging bewildered looks, completely lost. Then, in the blink of an eye, the guard set Ji Yuanfu down and reached up to tear off his disguise. As strands of hair flew free, the guard revealed her true face. I'm Yudo. One of life's great joys is encountering old friends in a foreign land. Time had passed, and the group of street urchins who had once lived together in a dilapidated temple had scattered to the winds, never expecting to reunite like this. The bandit leader, Long Lai, flung off his red robe, leaping down from his horse to embrace Song Liangwan, lifting her in joyous circles. The clash between officials and bandits came to an abrupt end, but after spinning her around a few times, Long Lai suddenly stopped, staring at Song Liangwan with a strange expression. "Yudo, never mind how you ended up working for the government. What's with your chest? Did you stuff it with steamed buns?" In that instant, Ji Yuanfu's face turned deathly pale. As they were seeing off Song Liangwan and Ji Yuanfu from Longtu's stronghold, Long Lai felt a deep sense of nostalgia. His younger brother had turned into a younger sister, the beggar had become a bandit, times had changed, and everything was different. The world truly worked in mysterious ways. At the foot of the mountain, the convoy carrying supplies was preparing to set off. Song Liangwan was pushing Ji Yuanfu's wheelchair. Just before leaving, she looked at Long Lai, hesitating before speaking. "Allah, you're skilled and smart. You really don't need to lead the brothers down this path." Long Lai flicked his red robe, his sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes sparkling in the sunlight, his smile both helpless and carefree. "Times are hard. The government forces people to rebel. We couldn't survive, so we had no choice but to become bandits, to claim land and rob the rich to help the poor. Don't worry, even if the path I'm on isn't the right one, I won't stray too far. I know my limits." Then, he pulled Song Liangwan aside and, with a bit of displeasure in his tone, said, "But have you really fallen for that crippled scribe?" Song Liangwan frowned and lowered her voice. "He's not just a crippled scribe. He was born with a leg condition. It's not his fault. Allah, don't speak about him like that. It upsets me." All right. Long Lai raised his hands in surrender, looking at her helplessly. "I'm just worried about you. There's a plague in Foam City, and bodies are everywhere. You must be careful. Keep the signal flare I gave you. If anything goes wrong, send us a signal. After all, Foam City isn't far from Longtu Mountain. We'll come as soon as we see it, got it?" Song Liangwan was deeply moved. Amid the rustling wind, she hugged Long Lai and gave him a playful punch on the chest, sniffing. "Good brother, you're the best." Even after Song Liangwan and the convoy disappeared into the distance, Long Lai stood atop the mountain, watching. He rubbed the spot on his chest where Song Liangwan had punched him, feeling an unfamiliar, strange sensation stirring within. The wind swept across the sky as the convoy resumed its journey. Inside the carriage, Ji Yuanfu asked what had been said earlier. Song Liangwan propped her chin on her hand and smiled at him. "Allah said you're really handsome, poised and elegant, clearly well-read and outstanding, like a dragon among men. He's just worried I'm too careless and clumsy, unworthy of you." Ji Yuanfu flicked her forehead, annoyed. "Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child?" He shook his head, gazing out of the window, sighing softly. Enough, enough. Inside the carriage, the curtains fluttered, and an unspoken sadness seemed to fill the air. After a long while, Song Liangwan suddenly moved forward, wrapping her arms around Ji Yuanfu's waist from behind. He flinched, but she rested her head on his shoulder. The wind from outside blew in, and neither of them moved. Ji Yuanfu could only feel a warm, damp sensation spreading across his back. After a long pause, Song Liangwan spoke, her voice muffled. Yuanzi, no matter what anyone says, you'll always be my Yuanzi. Nothing can change the way I feel about you, not even a little. I don't want anything, I don't need anything. I just want to be with you, to be together. So, please don't push me away anymore, okay? Even though she had braced herself, the devastation of Feng City exceeded Song Liangwan's expectations. Ji Yuanfu forbade her from going out, yet he went out every day to distribute relief supplies, returning late each night. Every time he came back, Song Liangwan would rush to strip him of his clothes and soak him, clothes and all, in a tub of mugwort water, making sure to cleanse him thoroughly. Ji Yuanfu couldn't resist, and he was utterly exhausted, so after a few rounds, he simply let her have her way. She would bathe him, fumigate the room with incense, and apply medicinal ointments, arming him from head to toe, terrified that the relentless plague would find its way in. Ji Yuanfu had never imagined that Song Liangwan could be so meticulous. When he mentioned it, she was anything but modest. Of course. Who do you think I am? She boasted proudly. Tell me, if I hadn't come along, wouldn't it be inconvenient not to have someone taking care of you? The night was hazy, and the wind beat against the window. Ji Yuanfu sat in a wooden bathtub, steam rising all around, making it impossible to see his expression clearly. I can take care of myself. Standing behind him, applying ointment to his back, Song Liangwan raised an eyebrow. It's not the same. How is it not the same? Ji Yuanfu waited for a long time, but didn't hear a response. Just as he was about to turn his head to check, Song Liangwan had already moved in front of him without him realizing. She swiftly leaned in and pecked him on the lips, smiling mischievously and assertively. That's what's different. For once, Ji Yuanfu, usually calm and composed, was left stunned, a suspicious blush rising to his cheeks. Suddenly, he sank beneath the water, while Song Liangwan burst into laughter. Her laughter echoed up to the roof, where it reached Long Lai's ears. Peering through the gaps in the tiles, his emotions were a complex mix of feelings. He suddenly felt like his trip had been rather unnecessary. The thing Song Liangwan feared the most eventually happened. When the first blister appeared on Ji Yuanfu's back, she abruptly covered her mouth, and the tray in her hand fell to the ground. Ji Yuanfu reacted quickly, immediately realizing what had happened. He quickly threw on his clothes and pushed her away, saying, "Get out, leave now, don't come near me." Tears poured from Song Liangwan's eyes as she shook her head and approached him. But Ji Yuanfu shouted fiercely, "Someone, come quickly." He had always been gentle, never raising his voice like this before. Almost yelling at the guard captain, he ordered, "Take Miss Song away immediately, escort her out of Fengcheng, and return her to Huai capital." "No, I don't want to." Song Liangwan, forcibly dragged away, struggled desperately, crying out, "I won't leave you. Please let me stay and take care of you." Ji Yuanfu turned his head, refusing to look at her. For the first time, his handsome face showed a chilling determination. Song Liangwan clung to the legs of his wheelchair, refusing to let go, her grip so desperate that even the guards were stunned, unsure of how to proceed. "Didn't you say you'd never push me away again?" Looking up at him, her face wet with tears, she gritted her teeth and sobbed, "You liar, coward, useless fool. I'm not afraid, so what are you scared of? At worst, we'll die together, buried side by side in the green hills. I'll stay with you forever." Ji Yuanfu took a deep breath, his hands gripping the arms of his wheelchair. Her heart-wrenching cries pierced him, and his eyes snapped open. But instead of softening, He flicked his sleeves and shouted with a fury that made everyone tremble. "What are you waiting for? Get Miss Song out of here, now." That night, after Song Liangwan had been taken away to Huai capital, Ji Yuanfu had a dream. Under a pear tree, he walked normally, and a child sat on his shoulders, giggling as he ran around the courtyard. Song Liangwan stepped out of the house, holding a basket of laundry, shaking her head with a smile. "You too, always so unruly. Ma Shu, come down quickly, or you'll tire your father out." The sun bathed the courtyard in warmth. Ji Yuanfu carried the child toward her, one step at a time, but just as he was about to reach her, a heavy fog rolled in, and her face faded from sight. The dream ended abruptly. Ji Yuanfu sat up, gasping for air, cold sweat covering his brow. Outside, the night wind rattled the windows. In the darkness, he remained motionless for a long time before murmuring to himself, "Yuanzi and Yudo's child, called Ma Shu. Huh?" It was absurd and comical. His hoarse voice cracked into a laugh. Was this what they called thinking of something by day and dreaming of it by night? But as he laughed, Ji Yuanfu suddenly covered his face, and tears fell like rain. There was no Yuanzi, no Yudo, and there would never be a Ma Shu. Half a month after Song Liangwan's departure, Ji Yuanfu's condition worsened daily. His body became covered in blisters, and he could barely leave the bed. At the same time, the magistrate of Fengqing could no longer stand by idly. With no cure for the plague in sight, he resorted to the most extreme measure, burning the infected to prevent further spread. On the day the order came, Ji Yuanfu was calm. He didn't say much, only requesting to change into clean clothes before leaving. Sitting in his wheelchair, he was wheeled through the streets littered with corpses on his way to the burning site. Despite his pale face, he held himself straight, just as he had when he first arrived. The guards escorting him wept, but Ji Yuanfu's expression remained indifferent. He gave them a final instruction. "After I'm gone, please send the letters in my room back to Huai capital to Miss Song. Tell her that Yuanzi won't be coming back. Yudo should find a good man. She mustn't be foolish. Time heals all wounds, and one day she'll forget." Before he could finish, a loud noise interrupted him. A signal flare exploded in the sky. In the strong wind, a figure suddenly leapt down from a rooftop, and before anyone could react, grabbed the wheelchair and bolted. The person who appeared out of nowhere to rescue him wasn't anyone else but Song Liangwan. She had gone to Tianlong Mountain to seek medicine and had rushed back just in time, barely missing Ji Yuanfu's final moments. There was no time for explanations. Heart racing, she cursed under her breath while pushing the wheelchair with all her might. "Who said you were beyond saving? You didn't even get my permission to die, and now you're thinking of leaving? Talking about finding me a good man, and how time will heal, what nonsense. Do you think you're a storyteller?" The wind whipped around them, her hair flying wildly. She pushed the wheelchair relentlessly, heading straight for the city gates as a large crowd pursued them. "Alai and the others should be arriving soon, so don't you dare give up. I told you not to give up. Did you hear me?" Her heart raced, and her face was drenched in tears before she even realized it. "If you dare to die, I swear I won't live either." In the jostling wheelchair, Ji Yuanfu trembled violently. Something overwhelming filled his chest, and his vision blurred with tears. When Song Liangwan woke up, she saw Ji Yuanfu, whose face was now peaceful, no longer plagued by his feverish illness. He slowly opened his eyes, his first sight being her resting beside him. Her hair had fallen gently, making her appear even softer. He trembled, lifting a hand to touch her face, but stopped midway. His eyes widened as he looked at his arm. It was smooth again, without any trace of the pox. His skin had returned to normal. The slight noise woke Song Liangwan, and upon seeing him awake, she cried out in joy, "You're awake, Yuanzi. You're finally awake." In that moment, she hugged Ji Yuanfu tightly, laughing and crying all at once. Ji Yuanfu remained still, his long lashes quivering as countless memories flooded his mind. It felt as if he had been dreaming forever, But this time, it wasn't a nightmare. Waking up to her, the world felt real again. As he slowly recovered, Ji Yuanfu learned what had transpired during his sleep. The day Song Liangwan had fired the flare, Long Lai and his men had arrived just in time, rescuing them and bringing them to Longtu village. Song Liangwan had administered the medicine she'd acquired, and gradually, Ji Yuanfu's illness began to retreat. He had survived, his life saved thanks to her. The medicine Song Liangwan obtained had not only saved Ji Yuanfu, but also the entire city of Fengcheng. The prescription, a remedy from the legendary healer Master Bodhi, had been secured after a long journey to Tianlong Mountain. Master Bodhi's intervention also saved 2 children from the ravages of the plague, Jin Shirling and Ji Yudang, who were later taken back to Tianlong Mountain for further care. After spending weeks recovering at Longtu village, Ji Yuanfu was finally strong enough to leave, and together with Song Liangwan, they prepared to bid their farewells. Long Lai, despite his reluctance, hosted a farewell banquet. After the feast, Ji Yuanfu, slightly inebriated, wheeled himself outside to cool off, only to overhear a conversation between Song Liangwan and Long Lai. They hadn't noticed him in the shadows, as they stood beneath the moonlit sky, the night breeze carrying their voices clearly. Long Lai's tone was tinged with melancholy. "Liangwan, I have to ask you one last time. Are you truly set on staying with Ji Yuanfu?" There was a brief pause before Song Liangwan sighed and replied, "Brother Long, I'm afraid I have nothing to offer in return for your kindness." Her words spoke volumes, leaving Long Lai clenching his fists. "But It's just his legs," she interrupted. "What's so bad about that? I don't care about that, nor do I care about what others think. All I know is that I love him. I've loved him since I was 13. I love the way he looks, the sound of his voice, everything about him. I'm Yudo, and he's Yuanzi. Who could be a better match than us? If he lives, I am his wife. If he dies, I am his widow. Who else could I be with if not him?" Her firm declaration left both men speechless. The night wind carried the finality of her words, shattering any lingering hopes Long Lai might have harbored. Hidden in the shadows, Ji Yuanfu was equally moved, but the sound of his wheelchair inadvertently echoed, causing Song Liangwan to call out, "Who's there?" Realizing he had been discovered, Ji Yuanfu quickly composed himself and imitated a few cat sounds, a skill he had perfected over the years. The convincing mimicry fooled the two, and as their conversation resumed, Ji Yuanfu let out a sigh of relief. "Brother Long, one day you'll meet a girl who loves only you, with all her heart. And when that day comes, I'll be there to celebrate with you and drink your wedding wine." Song Liangwan's words were full of warmth, and with a bow, she turned and headed back inside. The moonlight bathed the scene in silvery light, shadows dancing among the trees. After what felt like an eternity, Long Lai finally let out a soft sigh. Will such a person really exist? At that moment, another series of cat sounds echoed from the shadows, as if offering him comfort. Hearing the playful mimicry, Long Lai's crimson robe fluttered in the wind, and tears brimmed in his eyes, glistening under the moon. After surviving the ordeal, Ji Yuanfu and Song Liangwan finally returned to Huai City. Because of Ji Yuanfu's significant contributions during the crisis in Fengcheng, he was rewarded with a promotion and salary increase. He also won the approval of Song Liangwan's father, who had previously disapproved of their relationship. Now, with only mild reluctance, the old man agreed to their union. Good fortune seemed to keep coming. That same year, the third Miss Song of Huai City was finally engaged, and her fiancé was none other than the graceful Ji Yuanfu, who, despite being confined to a wheelchair, was every bit the sharp and handsome master strategist. Their wedding was scheduled for the following spring. Song Liangwan's father, however, wasn't about to let her roam freely before her wedding. He confined her to the house, insisting she study the proper skills of a woman to avoid embarrassment once she was married. But Song Liangwan was not the type to be kept still. Every few days, she schemed to climb the walls and escape. Meanwhile, Ji Yuanfu received a secret mission. When Song Liangwan heard about it at the magistrate's office, her entire world seemed to spin out of control. She could barely stand. Ji Yuanfu had taken a commission to lead troops to attack Longtu village and eradicate the bandits there. She raced off, her horse galloping tirelessly, but when she reached Longtu village, she was too late. A raging fire had engulfed the mountain, sealing off every escape route, and all the brothers of Longtu village were trapped with no way out. The once lush and thriving mountain had turned into a wasteland in a matter of moments. Song Liangwan fell from her horse, stumbling forward in disbelief. Covered in dust, she collapsed to her knees, wailing in agony. "Alai de Qian, little stammer." Her heart-wrenching cries echoed across the devastated landscape as Ji Yuanfu wheeled himself forward. He reached out to comfort her, but before he could say anything, Song Liangwan sprang up like a madwoman. With her hair disheveled, she pounded her fists against him, screaming, "You heartless bastard! How could you do this? You ungrateful wretch!" Ji Yuanfu grabbed her flailing hands and finally pulled her into his arms. She, in turn, bit down hard on his shoulder, refusing to let go. Gritting his teeth against the pain, sweat beading on his forehead, Ji Yuanfu whispered in her ear, "There's a tunnel beneath Longtu village. I already informed Alai and the others to retreat. I have a letter from him right here," he said, patting his chest. "He wanted me to tell you. The green mountains and rivers will endure, and one day we will meet again. When that day comes, don't forget to drink a cup of wedding wine with me." Song Liangwan froze, her teeth still sunk into his shoulder, her face streaked with tears. Just as she began to process his words, Ji Yuanfu whispered again, "Don't stop. Keep crying. The louder, the better." She was clever, instantly connecting the dots. Her eyes turned red again, and she snapped back into her usual lively self. Crying? She could do that. Right in front of the officers who had accompanied Ji Yuanfu to eliminate the bandits, she put on a show worthy of any drama, sobbing and wailing as she beat her chest and stomped her feet. Her cries echoed far and wide across the valley. "Ji Yuanfu, you heartless bastard. I'm not marrying you anymore. Not marrying you anymore." Ji Yuanfu's lips twitched as he leaned closer to whisper, "That's enough now. Just a little will do." But Song Liangwan wasn't satisfied yet, as if she hadn't gotten it out of her system. Her wails only grew louder, reverberating across the entire mountain range. "Not marrying you. Not marrying you. Not marrying him? Who else could she marry?"